Today is November 14th, 2019, and we're here at Marshall Public Library, and we have been doing a dementia series, and we're doing part 4 with Amelia Ladd, who is the nurse practitioner, and she will be discussing with us advanced directives.
I'm going to read this very quickly. It's not going to be long. As a hospice nurse in the early 1900s, Maureen was asked to talk with 2 daughters about hospice care for their elderly mother. Eleanor had suffered a nearly fatal stroke and was in a coma. The daughters had been offered 2 options: hospice care to keep Eleanor comfortable until she died, or a feeding tube that might prolong her life. Now Maureen, the nurse, suspected that Eleanor would not recover and that a feeding tube would only prolong her dying. For the 2 daughters, however, this, though, was a very complex decision regarding life and death. One daughter was in favor of hospice care and letting nature take its course. She felt that a feeding tube would be a torture for her mother. The other daughter felt strongly about inserting the feeding tube. In her mind, the feeding tube was the difference between life and death. Not putting it in would make her responsible for her mother's death. So Maureen watched the tension mount as the 2 daughters discussed the options. Their distress grew as they struggled to come to a decision. And finally, Maureen, the nurse, said, "It's clear you're having a hard time coming to an agreement. Why don't we consider what your mother would want and abide by her wishes? Did you ever discuss her wishes with you?" They stopped arguing and looked at her, and they said, "Yes, we have discussed it." "And what did she say? What did she say?" And they replied, "She said, when the time comes, I know you'll make the right decision." This is a scene that's played out across the country day after day. We all think we know what to do in a medical crisis. So when the time comes, we realize that we have no idea what our loved ones would want. To further complicate the matter, family members can be irrevocably split over how a loved one should be cared for. As a person who has worked a lot in the ICU with dying patients, I want to tell you what I have just read you happens more often than not. I would like to say that's not true, but it's not. And a lot of people confuse the fact that they've signed a living will as that would indicate whether they would want a feeding tube or not. It does not. A living will only says that if I become at the end of life, I don't want my life to be sustained. But it doesn't say that I wouldn't take a PEG tube, I wouldn't take a ventilator, I wouldn't take dialysis, I wouldn't take every antibiotic, I wouldn't take a port, I wouldn't take, right? So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to discuss all of those things so that not only you can make an informed decision, but you can help your loved one make an informed decision. I want to share with you that, and my daughter knows this very well, my personal bias is life. I will just tell you that. And when people talk to me about quality of life, I look at them and I say, to me, life, if it exists, is precious. However, that does not mean that all life should be continued beyond natural means. And we'll go ahead and talk about that. So anyway, I want you to hear her story. Now, consider the facts. 90% of people say that talking about their loved ones about the end of life is important. But how many actually do? 27%. Let's do another one. 82% of people say it's important to put their wishes in writing. How many do? 23%. Simple statistics that I want you to be familiar with. 80% of hospital patients are able to talk upon admission, but only 40% will be able to talk later when the doctors need to know the patient's wishes. Now, before I read that second statistics, I don't know how many of you in here are over 65, but for those of us who are, I want to tell you that the statistics are that if you're over 65 and you end up in the ICU within 48 hours, you will probably either be talking about a code status or you will not be able to communicate your needs. Within 48 hours, if you're over 65 and in an ICU. The thing of it is that's a pretty, that I want to tell you, that statistic I have found to be absolutely accurate. I have talked to more family members. Well, can you remember any kind of conversation that you've had with a parent? Tell me exactly how they responded when Uncle Joe went through this. Could you tell me, how do they treat the family dog? I have a joke. my deceased son, who I love dearly, had a dog, and the dog got old, and the dog started falling down the steps and doing all of these crazy things like peeing on the floor, blah, 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 blah. And so we had the dog put down. And I told Allie, do not let him make any decisions for me. No, he's not making any decisions for me, okay? But this is some statistics. Another one, 40% of cancer patients, okay, 40% of cancer patients, only 15% of COPD patients, and only 10% of end-stage renal disease patients. Those are the ones who are on dialysis all the time, okay? That's the only amount have discussions before they are no longer able to talk. Cancer patients particularly. And I want to tell you that these decisions are emotional, and they don't become emotional just because they don't become less emotional just because you're in the nursing field. I had a conversation, I'm going to try not to cry, with a dear, dear friend today about hospice. And I'm just crying on the phone with her, trying to help her think it through, trying to provide to her information in regards to what she needs to consider. What do you want to do, my dear? What do you think? How's the family going to react? Blah, blah. The emotions completely preclude you being able to think straight in the hospital. You can't think straight because you're so emotionally affected. 70% of people say they want to die at home, but actually 70% die elsewhere unless they've made those plans. About 10% of people will survive cardiac arrest if a bystander can reach them quickly. And few attempts at resuscitation are successful if CPR and defibrillation are not provided within minutes of collapse. If you are old and infirm and you are resuscitated in the hospital, you have less than, actually, 1% chance of surviving. 10% to 17% if you're young and healthy. But in all cases, you will run the risk of broken sternum, in some cases broken ribs, bruised ribs, and anoxia. You run the risk of all of those things. Now, how many of you guys remember Terry Schiavo?
No.
How many? What a nightmare was it? How many of you remember Karen Quinlan?
Yeah.
Remember? Wasn't it awful? Well, this is what it boiled down to. Michael Schiavo, the husband and legal guardian, said, I felt like Terry was finally going to get what she wanted and be at peace and be with the Lord. Mary Scheidler, her mother, said, no, I'm begging you, do not let my daughter die. Michael had no recollection of having it. I shouldn't say that. He did say he had a recollection of her saying that she wouldn't want to live like that when they had attended a funeral for someone who had died a very painful and suffering death. But the family were staunch Roman Catholics, and so they were not willing, and understandably so because of their faith, they were not willing to abandon life as long as it appeared to be present. Both sides were correct. But I do want to tell you that the media representation was truly a mess. Michael Schiavo, for the first 4 years, did everything under the sun for her. What he did is he did every speech therapy, every occupational therapy, he did every kind of physical therapy. He took her and had a brain implant put into her, hoping to be able to stimulate her brain so that it would grow some more. He went and took her and did some other kinds of water therapy to help her try to develop and stimulate the brain so that it would start responding again. He moved her out of the skilled nursing facilities into the Schiavo's home. All three of them were trying to take care of her from her home, but the caregiving burden was so excessive that even the Schivers said they could no longer do it and put her back in the nursing home. He worked very hard, and so much, in fact, that it came out in the court records that when he was accused of not wanting her to survive, that one of the nurses got on this testimony stand and said, you don't understand. He would berate us and cuss us out if she even had a bruise or a red mark on her. He intimidated the staff because he was so zealous for her care. When he lived with the Schivos even told him, you know what, you've done this long enough. It's okay if you want to start dating. He even brought some of the females that he was dating to meet the Schivos. It wasn't until about 4 years into because this happened to her in 1990. No,
What was the initial cause of her?
Well, what had happened is she had been on birth, she had been trying to get pregnant, okay? And so basically what happened is that he came home and found her collapsed. He did not do CPR, probably because he didn't know how to, but he called 911 right away, didn't leave her side. When they took her into the hospital, she had been without oxygen for at least 45 minutes, okay? They were able to resuscitate her after multiple trials, but they didn't get a response. What they finally decided is that the medication that she was on, trying to get pregnant, had created a metabolic imbalance, and that she had passed out, and then she had lost her respiratory system. So, in a nutshell, there's all of these complicating factors. And so after 4 or 5 years, he said, you know what, I just don't think this is what Heather would want. And so he started to initiate those procedures that would discontinue her feeding tube. Now, I want to tell you, and it's not in the notes, but you might want to remember this. The medical profession has something that they call the Little House on the Prairie test. And this is how you determine if something is a medical intervention. If Dr. Hiram, okay, remember from Walnut Prairie, on Little House on the Prairie, if he was able to use that particular procedure or treatment, that's how you know whether it is something that a person would live without. So that's how you determine if it's a medical treatment that is life-supporting. All right? Sounds strange, doesn't it? But I said to many patients, you know, if we were living in Sudan or Haiti or in the southern tip of Ethiopia, you know what? We wouldn't have this discussion.
Right.
So it's one thing, it's helpful for you to understand, and remember that, the Little House on the Prairie test. So if it couldn't have been done back in 1850, then it's probably a medical procedure. Okay? And that includes antibiotics, which didn't come on force until 1940.
Yeah.
Okay? It's amazing what's happened. So this was a mess, and as you know, it went into where Jeb Bush declared Terry's Law and went to the courts 3 or 4 times. The tube was taken out 3 times, and then finally put back in, then finally removed, and she passed because the Supreme Court said, we're not going to listen to this. And so it's a mess. But what it does, it tells you the complications that occur when someone doesn't have their wishes in writing. It is my personal belief that if she had had her wishes in writing, that she wanted to continue to stay with that tube as long as it took, that's what should have happened. That's my personal belief. And I tell that to patients all the time. What do you want to do? Now, there's all kinds of other things that take into play, financial burden, caregiving burden, and hopefully people will take that in consideration when they make their wishes known, but it's still their life. It's still their life, okay? So, as again, it's about Mrs. Schiavo and her own wishes not to be kept alive artificially. That was the court's decision. Toto, does this make enough sense? Do I need to explain that any further? The fact of the matter is that our technology has outsmarted us. The baby boomers have, and we are, maybe not you, but most of us are baby boomers, okay? And the fact of the matter is we have made tremendous strides. And some of them are quite scary. Do you know that there's a car that they are manufacturing right now for blind people to drive? You knew that?
Yeah.
It's pretty scary, isn't it?
Yeah, my daughter can't drive anymore.
Now,
Yeah,
am I delighted to know that we would provide that kind of technology and ability? Absolutely. But this is what I want to say. If the car malfunctions and you are broadsided, whose responsibility is it?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So for every time that they create a new technology, what it does is it generates all these issues. All of them. It doesn't just generate one issue. And this is what's happening in our medical field today, is that doctors are truly just practicing now because we no longer attempt to try to do a medication, try to do a procedure, whatever, before we understand that, oh, this is what might happen. and you don't discover it until it's happened. All right? So no, we are not in Kansas anymore. Now, here's an example of different types of medical interventions. Artificial ventilation or continuous BiPAP. Everybody knows what CPAP is, right?
Yeah.
Are you a nurse? Practitioner? No. Where are you working at?
I'm retired from hospice school.
I know you, but you do.
Family insurance.
How are you? Go ahead and jump in anytime, okay? Good job. Wonderful. Okay, so we should have put name tags on. So the fact of the matter is, everybody knows what CPAP is, okay? You get some sleep, you get some obstructive sleep apnea, so you put the CPAP on, right? Well, what BiPAP does is it does the alternating things. It pushes it in and blows it out. It's especially helpful for people with COPD because we want not only oxygen to go in, but we want CO2 to come out. And with COPD folks, what happens is the CO2 can't come out. So we put them on BiPAP. And if it's temporary or if it's nighttime, that's good, okay? But if you have to do it continuously, you are hooked to a machine. And complications can arise, not only infection and those types of things, but also it wears you out. It's that constant blowing, constant pulling. It's a very fatiguing type of thing. And in addition to that, what can happen is that you can also end up, the fatigue, vomiting into the mask, aspirating, blah, 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 blah. So it's a wonderful thing temporarily. But what do you do if you cannot get off of it? All right, I had a patient just 3 days ago, who said, I tried it, Amy, and I cannot do it. And I said, honey, do you know what's going to happen if you don't? And she said, I do. Mm-hmm. And I said, honey, your CO2 levels are already through the roof. And she said, I know, but I just can't do it. And so she was passed in 2 days. Okay? I prayed with her and I said, let's call your pastor. And so we called the pastor and she made a decision. And she knew what the consequences were, but she was too tired to go on. And she didn't want to be hooked to a machine. Artificial feeding or a G-tube, permanent kidney dialysis, temporary kidney dialysis is a real advantage. And I strongly support BiPAP if it's temporary. If it's not continuous. I strongly support even artificial ventilation, like being put on a ventilator in the hospital. Yes, absolutely. It's definitely something you should go if you have a good prognosis for success. You young, what you make at 18, 20, 30, 40 is a whole lot different than you make at 70, 80, 90. Okay? Permanent kidney dialysis, fine. Some people, I've known some people who've done that for 10 years. Some people, and this was one patient that I really literally got on my knees beside her bed in the ICU, and I still remember back and I said, don't you know what's going to happen if you don't do that? Because she was young. She had a good mind. She could still do things. And I said, don't you know what's going to happen to you? And Amy, I don't want to do it. And she too passed. Or the little patient who, I can go on and on. Valerie can go on and on. And we can tell you of the times it's happened. The CPR, the blood transfusion, surgery, even antibiotics are considered a form of aggressive intervention. Any questions so far? No. Well, I put this up here. How many of you remember when we were growing up? Remember? And back in the day, way back in the day, this is how many they had, right? Right? And then they went to 24, and then they went to 48, and now Jim and I found 64. Okay? Now, the problem is, this was a whole lot easier to choose than this is. This is the age we're in. And that's why it's helpful to be informed. Whatever you want is great, but you need to be informed because there's a lot of nuances that are involved. And Jim I'm constantly telling him and Allie too, this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do, okay? 75% of Americans do not have an advanced directive, such as a living will. You have one. Even young people should have at least a living will. I don't believe they should have all kinds of documents. This is one of my favorite cards. Can you see what it's a woman? She's standing before two hampers with children. And what is she saying? All I wanted was a back rub. That's what happens sometimes when you go in the hospital. All I wanted was an infusion, or all I wanted was hip surgery, or all I wanted, okay? This is the way the continuum works. Typically, all of us are over on this side of the continuum, of course, we're healthy, all right? And so we may get a cold or flu or whatever, so we take curative types of things. And so then what happens is the older we get, the more we're going to need symptom control and comfort care, okay? It doesn't mean you're dying. It just means that you need a blood pressure med, okay? You need to have some levothyroxine for your thyroid, or you need whatever, okay? And then what happens is that you get to a stage where you are in an end-stage condition, which is typically identified as 6 months or less. All right? They're trying to loosen that up a bit, and I would like for them to do that because we could make a whole lot of people a whole lot more comfortable if they knew that hospice has this idea of it being a death knell. It's really not true. Valerie knows too, I've had patients 3 years on hospice, okay? And then, of course, there's the group that follows after that. I like what C.S. Lewis says. The process of growing well is identifying and valuing what we've gained, not what we've lost. There's a story, one of my favorite stories, it's in one of Mitch Albom's books, and it's Have a Little Faith. And he tells this story about this man who's looking for a job. So he went to the farmer, applied for the job. The farmer got a resume, and the resume says this. The resume says he sleeps well in storms. And so he said, okay, but the man was desperate, so he went ahead and hired him. 3 or 4 months later, a terrible storm comes, okay? I mean, it's really a wild, crazy storm. So the farmer immediately rushes outside, goes and checks the livestock, and all of the cattle are bedded down and they've got their food. He goes over to the chickens, and all of them are in the roost, and it's tightly covered up, and there's no way that the wind can get in. He goes over and checks the feed, and the feed is carefully stored so that it cannot be ruined. And then he understood what it meant. And Eleanor shaved her head. He sleeps well in storm because he took care of business. Mm-hmm. He took care of business. And you know, that's what we need to do too. If you haven't expressed what your wishes are to somebody, you need to take care of business. Because you've got to protect yourself. You've got to protect yourself. Types of Illinois advances. I brought some of these if you're not familiar with them. A lot of people, and I know, the 2 of you came to my mind when I thought, and I said, I know that those 2 have their act together and that they have taken care of this. I really do. If you don't tell anybody because I still believe it. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that a living will does not protect you from a ventilator, a G-tube, or anything else. It just says that if at the end of my life, and it's really burdensome, don't do it. Just stop what you're doing, okay? But so there's the living will, the Declaration for Mental Health Treatment in Illinois. We don't have this in Indiana, but we have it in Illinois. And basically what it says is that the person that I'm choosing, and I would choose Allie or Jimmy, to go ahead if I suddenly develop some kind of deranged syndrome and I become schizoaffective, or I develop schizophrenia, or I develop some kind of disease where I'm harmful to myself or others, maybe I have a traumatic brain injury, whatever, that person will make decisions for me whether I would go to an institution, what kind of medications I would take, who the doctors I would see, those types of things. Practitioners, now this, notice here, the POLST, it's called a POLST. That is typically only given to folks in the last year of life. It's that they want to know, the physicians usually look at this if you've got a chronic disease and it's anticipated that you're not going to live a long time, okay? And so they will give you a POLST for that. So for folks in here, nobody would want that, okay? I mean, you can do it if you're 100, okay? But it's a medical order. It's one that you put on the refrigerator, and if the EMS people arrive, they will understand that you have said, no, I don't want to be resuscitated. Okay? That's the advantage of the Pulsed. It's a medical order that medical professionals must abide by. If you don't have that, and the EMS people arrive, even if you have written a DNR somewhere else, they are going to perform CPR because it's not a medical order, and they respond to medical people.
So are you saying they're going to check our refrigerator and see if we have something like that?
They know that. They do.
Oh, they do?
They do know that. And what I've told people to do is I said, don't put it on the refrigerator, put it on your front door.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a helpful to do. And then, of course, the attorney, the power of attorney for healthcare. And that's a big deal. You've got to have somebody you can trust because they can talk about you to anybody they want. And a lot of people don't want their health information shared. So choose carefully. You know, you don't want your estranged brother to know what's going on because he's going to come and try and steal the china out of mom's. You think I'm joking?
No.
I'm not joking. So the power of attorney is a big deal. So choose that. And I brought some of those forms and made some copies in the event that you want to review those. And I'm more than happy to explain them to you as we go along. This is the difference between an advanced directive and a pulsed. For healthy people, advanced directive is for healthy people. For example, people over 18 and who are young and healthy, I would always put, yes, give me CPR. Okay? Basic instructions about what you want or don't want. If you can't make your decisions, can be filled out by you. You can change any time. You'll need to make sure that people know where to find it. But the other one is a medical order. It is technically not an advanced directive. It determines medical treatments you do or don't want. It's completed with your doctor or nurse practitioner. I completed one just the other day with somebody. You can change it any time. The form becomes part of your medical record. With this form, EMS and emergency people must follow it. Now, who might not be able to make decisions for you? You may be married, but if you're estranged, it's possible that they will not let that husband make decisions for you. The husband will not be able to make decisions for you if he's the reason you're in the hospital. Okay? Now that may sound like common sense, but it's not. So that's one of the things. Not all states are quite as specific about that as some. But in this state in Indiana, if they're the reason you're in the hospital, they're not going to make any decisions for you. Okay? A spouse you're legally separated from, and that's legally a person who has pending criminal charges involving you, and anyone who you had intentionally excluded when you signed your advance directive. In the Illinois, they have a priority and a pecking order in regards to who can. I don't know if I put that up here. Let me see if I did. No, let's go back. In order. So if you do not have any documents written out, this is the order that they follow. The first one is the patient's guardian or person, so their person, okay? The next one is their spouse or partner in a registered civil union, the adult child, then a parent, then an adult sibling, then an adult child, grandchild, a close friend of the patient, and then the patient's guardian of the estate, which might be, for example, the bank, okay? Somebody like that. So this is the pecking order, and they follow it. Yeah.
Amy, what if you have someone designated and they have passed away?
I'd get a new one. I'd get somebody to sign up.
But what if it's saying a common accident or something?
Yep. That's an excellent question. Chop, chop. my husband's always teasing me.
So should you say an alternate or a second?
And that's a great question. And you can put that on the form. You can put a second designee, and then you can even put a third designee.
Okay.
Okay? That's not unusual. I just want to give until I find myself. You know, I'm going to tell you a little story that happened in the ICU, and it just broke my heart. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I'm talking with this family and counseling them in regards to the severity of their loved one's illness. And it was their mother. And these two sons they could not barely be in the same room together. They had their wives with them. And so the patient had not indicated what her wishes were, and so trying to get from two opposing folks, okay, we came to an agreement in regards to what the patient wanted. But then the wife of one of the sons stood up, and she, with tears in her eyes, she stood in front of those two boys and she said, "You know what your mother wants." And I said, "This is going to be interesting. You know what your mother wants. She wants the two of you side by side, hugging at her bedside before she dies." And I thought, "Let's go, boys." And that's what I said. "Let's go, boys." And so, finding yourself, you can find yourself even in the midst of sacrifice, even in the midst of trying to make reconciliation, even in the midst of trying to work things. And so, this was a movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I forget what the title of it is. But that was one of the quotes that came out of that movie, and basically it was about a young cancer woman, a young cancer patient, and her caregiver. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you guys seen it? I should have brought it because I would have loaned it out. And it was really good. And this was the patient, and this was her caregiver, who was a bitter young man, and how she brought him healing, and she was just helping him find himself. So have the discussion. Keep calm and complete your advance directive with your healthcare agent, representative, your spouse, partner, your family members. Using the form, make your choices clear. Now, there's something that's called the Conversation Kit, and it is a nationwide thing. And you guys remember Ellen Goodman? Remember her? She was a syndicated columnist. She was really a good writer, and I really enjoyed her. And she's recently retired. But basically, what happened is that she initiated this when her parent was dying, and she was just at a loss as to what to do and how to approach some of the difficult questions that needed to be answered. And so she started that, and it's just been a really good thing. And this is her mother that you can see. Ellen is, of course, in the bottom. Yeah. 5 wishes. This is another form that I would recommend you think about buying. If you go online, you can buy one for $5. I bought them at multiple, and I have one to give away if someone wants one tonight. But I want to show you what I wrote so that my daughter, this is public, everybody hears me say this. Now you know. If either one of them don't abide by this, okay? What it does is it shows that Illinois, this is a legal form in the state of Illinois. You can go online and you can get this. What it does, it answers these 5 issues. The person I want to make healthcare decisions for me. Now that I've already filled out with our will and those types of things, and Alan and Jimmy are of course with that. It speaks very, very expressly in regards to what a power of attorney does and what they can do and what they cannot do. All right? My wish, this is what is most important. My wish for the kind of medical treatment I want. For example, it says, life support includes medical devices put in me to help me breathe, food and water supplied by a medical device or tube feeding, CPR, major surgery, blood transfusions, dialysis, antibiotics, and anything else meant to keep me alive. Many people opt out of surgery if they're over 90 or 95. I'm just saying, and I get it, you know. They're more worried about surviving surgery than they are whatever the issue is. And so what I put down here is I said, I want you to perform CPR unless I have an end-stage disease, including Alzheimer's. I wrote discontinue CPR if I have not had a return of spontaneous circulation, that's a technical term, after 5 minutes. I know in all likelihood, first of all, you're probably broken everything I have, you probably punctured a lung, and in addition to that, I'm probably anoxic. Just let me go, okay? I do not want a peg tube for Alzheimer's or any condition that will not return me to my previous level of competent cognition. If I have a stroke and I'm able to do things, then yeah, give me a tube. Okay, I'm able to talk and read my Bible and pray and communicate with folks, okay? But if I don't have competency is one of the things that I want to maintain. That's my prayer. And then I put a temporary ventilator, yes, but to remove it after 10 to 14 days if there's no hope for recovery. And the reason I do that is because I know about the complications that are involved with long-term ventilation. And so I also know that if it hasn't worked by then, the chances of it at my age is going to become more reduced. And so then I wrote other things. I put about close to death what I want. Nope. In a coma, nope. Permanent severe brain damage, nope. In any other condition. If I'm 18, I'm going to put something different. Okay? And then how comfortable I want to be. For example, I wish to have a cool, moist cloth put on my head if I have a fever. Few people know this, but oral care is one of the most comforting and comfortable things you can do for people who cannot eat. It diminishes their sense of thirst. So if they don't have a tube and if they can't swallow, keep their mouth moist. It's one of the kindest things you can do. Another one, I wish to have warm baths often, and I put in here, I want a pillow between my knees and I want to be turned over 2 hours. Okay? And so you can see what I have written. Okay? Jim says, whatever you write, I want. This helps you, it really details it for you and helps clarify it to a great extent. Okay? Any questions so far? I'm talking fast, aren't I?
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, I know. Okay, the Go Wish game. Now, I want some volunteers. Allie?
Okay.
How about you? And Jim? Okay. Now, this is what the Go Wish game looks like. Okay, it's just a series of cards. But I'm going to show you what those cards are. Okay? So, and actually, I'm going to take you two also. Yeah. Hold on. These are some of the items that are on the card. Thank you. Now, what it does is it says, okay, now everybody sees what they are? Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to choose between those first two, to be free from pain or to meet with clergy or chaplain. Which one would be most important to you?
I think I want to meet with
With clergy or chaplain? Okay.
Your shower.
Would anybody else want to be free from pain? Perfect. And that's what I wanted you to say, is because we want you to see that what's a priority for you may not be for someone else. And so what Alta would do is she would put free for pain in her important pile. You guys would put to meet with the clergy or chaplain in your important pile. Okay, now let's look at these next two. Not being connected to machines or to have my funeral arrangements made. What would you prefer? Not to be connected to? Okay. What about? No? Okay. And so everybody's pretty much saying this one at this point in time. Okay? But that's exactly, so this would go on the important pile. Okay? Now here, we have two more. To have an advocate who knows my values and priorities or to be mentally aware? Mentally aware.
They both would go in my important
And
pile.
see,
yeah.
and when you play the game, there's three piles. Most important, somewhat important, and least important. And then what you do is you try to get the first 10, and then you review those, and you can do that.
Sure.
So that's how the game is played. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
All right. But when you do it, what you need to do is you need to do it with folks like this. Because if I make these decisions without talking with Allie and Jim, I may have some resistance down the road. They can also give me clarity in regards to, Mom, I really think you ought to go with the advocate thing rather than being mentally aware, because what if you aren't mentally aware? Do you see what I'm saying? So when you use the game, and you can buy the game too, it helps you clarify what's important. Okay? Thank you, guys. Okay, I like it. So these are the things that are on there. These are just the items, and we saw some of them. Okay, I'm going to just give you a minute to glance at that. But this is what is on the Go Wish, what is on the cards. And then a wild card is included in the set to allow for wishes that may not have been listed, okay? So these are the ones you divide into 3 piles. Lesson Before Dying. This was the story of a teacher. This was another movie that we liked really well. And basically what happens is that this teacher, Don, I don't know how, Cheadle, is that how you say his name? Okay. He's a teacher and he's very resistant, but there has been a young black man who has been wrongly accused of murder and now he has been sentenced to death. And so his family are wanting Don to go and teach him how to die with dignity. And it's a really interesting movie, because he's so resistant to it. But right back here is what I want you to see. We're teachers and we have a commitment. All of us are teachers. We may not know it, but we are. We're teaching somebody something. And he said, do you think you're the only one who ever felt this way? Because the pastor was arguing with him. You think I've never felt this way? You think she ever felt this way? Every last one of them at one time wanted to give up, but they didn't. And so you may want to say it isn't worth it to try and talk to my loved one or whatever, but I say persevere, because there's nothing better than having that out of the way, and all you have to do is love them in the end. Okay, my poor husband, he's such a good man. I said to him, honey, I don't know why you
She does, just like her.
Honey, would you count me out 700 pennies? And he said, 700 pennies? I said, yes. And so he did. Now, you're probably wondering what this means. Well, basically, you can see up here, it says 25,500. In a nutshell, a man decided what he would do is he would take and put marbles, and he put the number of marbles in there that he would need until he reached the age of 70, and every day what he would do is he would take out a marble, and it reminded him how much time he had left to get the important stuff done. And so until I reached 70, it's really not 700 now. That's how many pennies I would have left to take out one a day. Isn't that something? For the next 2 years. And so I think that it's one of those kinds of awakening type of situations that remind us we don't have forever, and we need to make plans what we need to do. Okay. And I like this. First of all, I think Richard Gere's cute, but also I liked what he said. My dad teaches me how to act every day of his life. And I thought, that's what we need. We need to do that. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, to know even one has breathed easier because you've lived, this too have succeeded. And we can make a whole lot of people breathe easier if we would just do our advance directives. And legacy is not leaving something for people. It's leaving something in people. And so what I would like to do is that I'd like to, Jim, would you pass out? You guys just keep these, enjoy them, if you would. And then, as you know, I am contributing to the library a couple of books. And I've made them faith-based because there's a whole lot of books that are not faith-based. And there's very few that are faith-based. And so I'm going to give these to the library in regards to, this is an excellent book. They're both good books. And it's interesting because this one I bought in the 25-cent aisle out here at the Marshall Public Library. If you want it back, you can have it back. And so what I say is that I just encourage you to think about the implications of helping other people live successfully and beautifully, even until the very end. Are there any questions at all that I can answer? Do you have anything? Valerie, do you have any kind of contribution that you could add? No?
Yeah, my husband, I told your husband, he died with a brain tumor 22 years ago, and I had hospice from Illinois. I couldn't give him from Indiana because you guys don't have dual license in
They can't cross a straight line. Yeah.
I know. So anyway, she was the best thing. It was more like when I was a nurse, you know,
Hands-on,
hands-on.
patient-centered.
not computer, but
I know. I still won't take my computer home. Nope. Write it out.
Right.
I still do paper. I have to do the computer later, but it takes me twice as long, but I don't take that computer in there. You're busy holding hands.
yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? What kinds of questions? If you want help in regards to these are here.
Oh, yeah.
I've got the things for you in regards to the polls, the power of attorney for health care. This is an explanatory form, living well, and also in the health treatment. So if you need copies of those, please feel free to.
So are those just Illinois forms? They're
These are
not-
the Illinois.
Where did you find those forms? Like, do you just Google those titles?
There's plenty enough for people here tonight, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
because what we'll do at the library is we'll keep a copy of each of those then.
Good.
Just kind of a original in case you.
That's why I said 5 wishes form, you can have that one, not this one, because Jim's got to follow it.
I want it. 'Cause I
You
don't-
got it.
I don't use the computer.
And if anybody else wants another one, oh, excuse me, honey.
I'll let it, unless there's an address. or
Well-
telephone number.
Yes, dear.
This thing with wishes and directives and have them all written down. What if you're in Timbuktu and something happens to you? Those things are not going to be.
No, the beautiful thing is 5 wishes, if you complete it online for $5, it is kept online. And so what you do is you put that little thing in your bill.
Huh?
Yeah. And but you can also do the things that you can also get a do not resuscitate form or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am a nurse. Really tattooed do not resuscitate.
So that's the first thing they say.
You travel
I would do that.
travel quite a bit.
She was a young nurse.
And so.
Yeah. You know, life is, we are gifted with life. We are gifted
Yes.
with life. And disability does not mean the end of the world. In fact, one of the things that I wanted to show you, and I thought I had it, hold here. Let me just show you the difference that this could make. I got a picture here. You remember, and you guys may not have known this, 2 examples. See this lady right here? Do you remember? Just recently, she came back from vacation, and while she was on vacation, I think she was in the Caribbean island somewhere, she'd taken her key card from the hotel room, and when she put it in, she had scratched herself. Okay, so just a little bitty scratch, didn't think much about it. Came home, her dog licked her with joy when she came home. She unfortunately got necrotizing fasciitis, and then lo and behold, she woke up 10 days later from her event, and both arms and both legs were amputated.
How many days?
Huh?
10. Wow.
Necrotizing fasciitis. And this is what she said. She woke up from the 10-day coma to find her limbs had been amputated. I cried the hardest I've ever cried in my life. She said, I kind of wish they would have let me go because I can't live like this. What am I going to do? But look at this person. Same situation. This little lady had just given birth. She gave birth, and lo and behold, she's recuperating. But then, unfortunately, she developed sepsis, which then turns into necrotizing fasciitis, and her arms and legs were cut off. And she wakes up 10 days later to her newborn baby, her 3 other children. And this is what she says. It's a complete miracle that I'm alive, so I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I wouldn't be here for my kids if they hadn't taken my arms and legs. So again, it comes back to what you want. And it also tells you that you're never too young to make out an advance directive. From the minute that little one back there, she got told who runs the directive here. From the time she was 2 or 3 years old, I had an advance directive because I wanted her taken care of. From the time she was 2 or 3 years old. And so you just cannot you can't understate how much it is, how important it is to just take care of things. Take care of things. But again, disability is not the end of the world. It's, in fact, we are a richer world because of it. Privileged people can be quite